fined. The fine was so minimal. I mean, it's less than a slap on the wrist.
Revenue authorities around the world, the big revenue authorities, are aware of the scale of what the professional enablers do and the scope of their reach. So they've formed various joint task forces to try to combat hidden income, hidden assets, and the whole camouflaging of beneficial ownership by the enablers.
Australian authorities have been trying to track offshore tax evasion for years. In 2006, the ATO launched the biggest tax fraud investigation in Australia's history. It was dubbed Project Wickenby.
So Project Wickenby was, I guess, the first time that we brought together a multi-agency focus on offshore tax evasion. We raised well over $1 billion in liabilities, in tax that wasn't paid and additional penalties.
My name is Vanda, V-A-N-D-A, Gould, G-O-U-L-D.
One of its targets was a Sydney accountant who was a client of Asia City. His name is Vanda Gould.
And I'm presently at Long Bay Corrective Centre at the jail.
Vanda Gould spoke to Four Corners from prison. He was arrested on tax fraud charges in 2013.
I was at home. I was doing some exercise on the exercise bike. I was, and then we had all these Commonwealth police came in and sort of raided the house.
Vanda Gould met Graham Briggs in the mid-80s and began doing business with him in the early 90s.
I met Graham Briggs and we got chatting and having a chat to him. Wasn't a very long call, just discussion. And then subsequently he took it upon himself to make contact with me. When you talk to him, he's a genuinely decent sort of human being.
Asia City's Samoa office had come up with a lucrative new product. It was pitched as a Samoan superannuation scheme. Briggs wrote to Gould explaining how it worked. Western Samoa has no taxation treaty with Australia. Therefore, it offers complete exemption from all forms of income tax and provides absolute secrecy and confidentiality. Gould put his clients' money into Asia City's offshore super funds.
Because essentially their office provided all the support staff. So they actually established the super fund, they got the lawyers to actually prepare the deeds, they got every transaction that was entered into, they were integral to those transactions.
Asia City's Samoan super scheme had a brilliant twist. Clients were able to access their money before they retired via loans from the super fund.
Well, the temptation for tax, if you want to avoid it, is to set up a Samoan fund, have your employer settle some money on it, and then the income of the Samoan fund, the theory was it was not taxable in Australia. So the income of the fund can be earned tax-free in Samoa, but if you want to get it back to Australia, we did have rules, like all super funds, that if you got a payment on death, disability, a certain age being reached or retirement, you were taxable on it. So the answer is don't get a payment for any of those reasons, rather get a loan. Loans in any form of tax jurisdiction aren't taxable. So if I loan you money, you're not taxable on the amount I give you. It's not income, it's not a gain. You haven't benefited at all, you've just borrowed from me. So in this case, they simply, the Samoan fund would loan the money back to the Australian resident.
But the tax office had some questions about Samoan super schemes. In 2010, it issued a public warning saying the schemes were being used to conceal income or assets and that so-called loans from them may be a sham.
What we would do in those sorts of arrangements is ask some questions. Well, if this is truly a commercial loan, for example, Where are the documents that sit behind that loan? What interest rates are being paid? Show us where your repayments are going. What have you invested that in? And often where these arrangements are purely non-commercial, they're unable to answer those sorts of questions.
The taxpayer alert just is like a siren that says we're watching. It didn't change the law. The taxpayer alert just highlighted that the tax office was aware that certain people were doing certain things.
Gould's tax fraud charges were eventually dropped, but he was later jailed for perverting the course of justice for coaching a witness to lie. Gould's clients were ordered to pay back more than $300 million to the ATO.
My job is to actually help taxpayers get through the labyrinth of the Australian Tax Act in the most effective way. And if one of the most effective way means they reduce their taxes, well, so be it. I don't think there's any morals in it.
The leaked documents show Graham Briggs was questioned by Australian authorities while they investigated Van der Gould's Samoan operation. Briggs was never charged or accused of criminal conduct. Van der Gould still supports him.
No. I mean, I was going to have any hard feelings against Graham, but, just watch this space. God will ultimately vindicate me.
I think that the first thing to always bear in mind is that most people do the right thing, and there's nothing illegal with holding money offshore, provided that it's declared to the tax office. And most people do the right thing.
While Graham Briggs has retired to his vineyard outside Melbourne, Asia City continues to do business in tax havens around the world. In a statement, Asia City said,
"We are committed to the highest business standards, including ensuring that our operations fully comply with all laws and regulations in each jurisdiction in which we operate. The regulatory and industry landscape has evolved over the course of our 45-year history, and we have worked diligently to comply with prevailing regulations through this passage of time."
The problem with the offshore world is that it's up to these service providers to regulate themselves. So there are rules that are set down by governments, but there's no one government overseeing it. There's no sheriff here. And so when you're living in this sort of parallel universe where there is actually no government oversight to speak of, it's actually very important that these firms follow the rules.
In 2016, the original Panama Papers leak caused global outrage about offshore secrecy. The federal government committed to a beneficial ownership register, which would force the true owners of corporate structures to be disclosed. It still hasn't happened.
We've been campaigning for at least 5 years now to get a public beneficial owners register. Australians have a right to know who is buying their land, their sovereign wealth, their future. I'm not going to get into any arguments about whether foreign investment is good or bad, but bloody hell, our laws should be good. Accountants and lawyers who do set up a lot of these structures for illicit funds aren't required to even provide any detail to regulators around who is the ultimate beneficial owner of this particular investment. There's no real reason for that, except for that these industries like the accounting profession and the legal profession have lobbied very ferociously in Canberra.
This reticence to set up a beneficial ownership registry therefore undermines the efforts of Australia's allies to actually plug the problem and check the problem. But what happens is if you allow the trend to continue and you allow the country to essentially be a destination for illicit wealth that buys up land, buys up real estate, when you start becoming a destination for criminal money and ill-gotten money, there's the question of what other problems are you bringing in with it as well. Is it going to be just the money? Because it's never just the money.
It's estimated up to 1/10 of the world's wealth is parked in offshore financial centres, costing governments hundreds of billions of dollars in lost tax revenue each year. There's increasing calls for Australia to strengthen regulations governing this parallel world.
We are woefully behind the times. So, of all the Financial Action Task Force members around the world that haven't complied with all of the obligations around gatekeeper professions, that's the US, China, and then you're talking about countries like Madagascar. And then on that list of countries, you have Australia. So we've really dropped the ball in this area.
Look, most lawyers, accountants and other professionals do the right thing. It is relatively easy to be tempted to get involved in offshore tax arrangements. My message to them is that don't facilitate lying, cheating and stealing from other Australians. You will soon find yourself over your head in these arrangements. They're not clever, they're not harmless, they victimise the entire Australian society.